Hey there, baseball fans. Nathan Rohde, Shooter Hunt, and Les Lukach here for the latest episode of Coffee and Curveballs. Obviously, we got Les on today, Shooter, so the topic is Southern California, baby.
Socal baseball. It actually rained for the entire week, but as soon as I hopped off, the sun seemed to come out. It was a great weekend of baseball over Martin Luther King holiday, and got to see some talented players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Les, I'm sure you guys are excited that rain has moved on because I know everybody out there kind of freaks out when it happens.
Dude, you got to stay off the roads when one drop of water hits, and as much rain as we got. Dude, I drove probably a total of 1.5 miles those 4 days. It's a zoo out here.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Well, let's talk some baseball. As Shooter mentioned, MLK weekend. That's kind of one of the big weekends for California to kick things off. You got a bunch of quote-unquote tournaments going on, really just a bunch of round robins, teams playing each other at various sites. And you guys took in a lot of action, especially at J. Sarah. Tremendous job by head coach Brett Kay there to do some schedule adjusting with teams dropping out, fields being wet, and all that sort of thing. But you guys were able to get some good stuff in. So let's go through 2019, 2020, and 2021s and talk about a few guys. But Les, you can start us off. A couple of guys out of the San Diego area, and Jake Rons and Kiani Cavaco, I hope I got that right, that stood out for you.
Yeah, man. Actually, I headed down to San Diego State on Saturday for their team camp, and it was just a loaded event. And these guys, Jake Rons was a USC commit that kind of fell through the last minute there, but big projectable righty. I mean, he was up to 89, touched 89 several times. He was 88, 89. Really loose, repeatable delivery. The arm is just outstanding. Big projectable body. I mean, 75, 76 on the curveball, man. He was snapping this thing. A lot of swing and miss. It's just an easy arm action. And I think because of everything that went down, I mean, he's pitching with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. He looked really, really good. He looked as good as I've seen him. I hadn't seen him since the summer, but he looked really, really sharp. And then Cavaco. He's a guy that I know you guys saw down in Jupiter. Swings the bat, really big physical third baseman. Was talking to his pitching coach, Ramon Orozco, who used to be at USD, and he's telling me before the game that he's really excited to see him on the mound. He hasn't thrown a whole lot, and all he did was come out and work 89, 92, touched 93 a couple times. And if that wasn't enough, he's throwing a fading changeup at 82, 83 against Huntington Beach. Who, as we know, is pretty stacked, and he went 1, 2, 3, worked around a base hit by Eddie Pelk. Eddie Pelk put a nice stroke on a 92 mile an hour fastball down the middle. But I mean, Cavaco on the mound, dude, guys, when you watch this video, when you get eyes on him in the spring, you're really, really gonna like what you see because he brings that physicality to the mound that he brings to the plate and that he plays third base with. Really intriguing on the bump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like Cavaco is one of those big names coming out of this weekend who immediately, right from Jump Street in January, puts his name on the map for scouts to go out there and check out. I got a chance to get over to Servite High School, which they were able to keep that field dry somehow for a Saturday game against Ukaipa. And Ukaipa has an arm, Ty Heaton, right-hander going to BYU. Was up to 89. The fastball is riding life. He was able to get a ton of swings and misses. Big physical frame, 6'2", probably about 210 or so. A little bit of an open strider down the mound, but the fastball, he was able to throw it to the top of the zone, get those swings and misses. Dropped in a couple breaking balls, which I think they'll get better as the year goes on. He's only up to 89. I say only because he also hit in the middle of the order. He's got a ton of athleticism, and I can see a lot more velocity coming as the year goes along. This was probably his first, maybe second outing of the quote-unquote spring there in SoCal. But he's a good-looking prospect moving forward from Ukaipa, which is a stacked team this year.
Nice. Let's move on to some 2020s. Unless you got Ryan Rhodes and then Desmond Cabanilla.
Yeah, Ryan Rhodes, he pitched the last inning of the first game. St. Augustine down there in San Diego is a traditional powerhouse. They rolled out a few arms, and then he came in to close things out. Really, really intriguing. 85, 86 on the fastball, 72, 74 on a sharp, biting breaking ball. It's a projectable arm. He's about 6'2", about 180, 185, so there's still some more growth, I think, happening in there. Huge feet, man. I mean, have to be size 13, 14 feet. So I can't imagine that he's done growing, but the arm's pretty loose. A little bit of a slingshotter right now. But I think that, with repeated innings and more work this spring under that staff, that's really, really good staff. I think he's just going to just blossom into a frontline guy for them. And Desmond Cabanilla, I hadn't seen him since early summer. I mean, we're talking like June of last year. All he did was come out for Rancho Bernardo, was 88, 89, wow. Real tight curveball up to 71. I mean, the arm's loose. It's whippy. He's getting some attention already from some D1 schools, and rightfully so. I mean, you look at this guy. He's probably 6'1", but, dude, if he's a $160 soaking wet, I'd be shocked. So, I mean, he's a guy that's going to fill out and just grow, and, I mean, a lot of projection, a lot of upside there. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. Quick little note, a guy called time. The umpire granted it to him right as he was in a start pitching, walked around the mound, stood on the third base side of it, took the fingertips to the tongue and just stared down the batter. I love it. Then he pumped a 90-mile-an-hour fastball in on the hands for a called strike three. Stared at him as he walked back to the dugout. I was like, dude, so I made sure I noted that. I mean, that's the type of fire this guy pitches with. So really projectable guy, the shooter you're going to want to see here as quickly as you can.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. While you were watching him down south in San Diego, I was up at Jay Serra and got a chance to see from Valencia High, Ryan Kaiser, right-handed pitcher, about 6'1", 185. He's committed to Arizona. With lack of better description, it's a drive-line delivery where he's working quick. It's an efficient arm action. The ball jumps out almost right from his ear. He's creating a downward plane, the fastball, 86 to 88. More is on the way, but was able to spin a tight 12-6 curveball for strikes. Just the way he went about his business for the first 3 innings, it was real sharp. Scuffle got a little bit tired later on in the game, but I thought he was able to battle out of those little glitches, which showed even more to me. But he's going to be one of those frontline guys for Valencia, which is a big team, and one that, Les, you'll be hearing about. They may not be making the noise right now, but I think by the time the year's over, they'll have something to say about the Socal championships.
Nice. Well, real quick, let's get through some 2021s. Shooter, you mentioned being at Jay Serra, perennial program there, and obviously they got a couple of guys that you guys saw. Les, tell us about Gage Jump, the left-hander for the Lions.
Yeah, Gage Jump got some innings for them last year, and Shooter, I'm sure you'll agree. The first thing that stood out to me when I saw Jay Serra is just how much more physical they are this year.
Yes.
Gage Jump is one of those guys that has really taken the weight room serious. Lefty last year was 80, 81. This year, when I saw him on Sunday, he was 84, 86, touched an 87.
Wow.
Got a nice fading changeup at 74. The curveball is 69 to 71. Just a guy that's made huge strides in the last year. He's pretty big physically. I don't know how much bigger he's going to get, but the arm's loose. It's whippy. They got a pitching coach down there that's really into the analytics stuff. They have TrackMan, as you guys know. And so they're really using that data to improve their pitchers. And that was noticeable to me, in addition to how physical they are. But Gage Jump is a guy that's really taken a big jump, no pun intended, in his game. And I'd expect him to get a lot more innings for Jay Serra this year, being that he's a really darn good left-handed pitcher for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and another 21, Luke Jewett on that team, who we saw at the Socal preseason, runs about a 6'8", 6'9", 60. He's also a catcher. But he hopped on the mound for me the first night on Friday. And now, when you're in Orange County at Jay Serra, the day starts off a bit brisk in the morning. It becomes nice and warm throughout the day. And when that sun goes down, the breeze picks up, and it gets downright cold, especially coming off the heat. So Luke Jewett came in the night game. It was cold, comes in for the 4th inning, and he goes 88 to 91. Fastball's exploding through the mitt with some arm side life. I think there's much more in there. Again, this was early on in the season. He's going to be throwing real hard. Les, I know you got to see him again on Monday where he was ripping off a couple good sliders. But just the athleticism of Jewett, I think he's going to be a real good one for that Jay Serra program.
Nice. Excellent. Well, to wrap things up here, Les, tell us a little bit about looking ahead to the spring. Obviously, we got the usual big players like Harvard, Westlake, Orange, Lutheran, expecting big things out of them on the field. But give us a few teams other than those guys to watch this spring.
Yeah, we could do a podcast just on those guys alone if we wanted to. Shooter, you mentioned Ukaipa. They're loaded. I mean, they've got a lot of talent up and down that lineup and on the ground there. So Ukaipa's a team to watch. Ayala, which we talked about a little bit earlier before we hopped on the air with Joe Naranjo, Cole Koniarski. They've got several D1 guys. But for me, the other two guys that are the other two teams that not a lot of people are talking about, Corona and Maranatha. Maranatha is absolutely stacked. Cole Dale, Dawson Nets on the mound. They're just loaded. 4 D1 arms and I think a total of 7 D1 commits altogether. They make the jump up to D1 this year to make things interesting. And then Corona. Corona is just going to be really, really good. They lost a little tough game there to Olu last year in the postseason. They return everybody on the mound. Michael Flores, who's a St. Mary's commit. They got Elijah Green, an outfielder who's an Oregon commit. They can hit. They put pressure on the defense. They're going to be a really fun team to watch. They went 4-0 this weekend in the Jay Serra deal. They used 14 different arms to do that. So it gives you an idea of the depth they've got on the mound and just overall on the roster.
Excellent. Well, good stuff, guys. Appreciate you giving us a little bit of dope on the MLK weekend out there in California. Be sure to jump on prepbaseballreport.com. Check out more content from the weekend. Shooter's got an On the Hunt out with a bunch of guys. We'll go into more depth on a podcast about some of those draft guys, and obviously Les and his crew will have plenty of content on prepbaseballreport.com. So, as always, for Shooter Hunt and Les Lukach, I'm Nathan Rohde. This was Coffee and Curveballs, and until next time, we'll see you guys at the ballpark.